Hey guys, over at Fantasy Sabers, for the entire month of August, we're giving away a free The Sun Deluxe edition with every Saber order. We offer the best NeoPixels on the market, so grab one for yourself. What if Luke Skywalker was reborn with all of his memories? Let's start the story in the year 36 ABY. Luke was projecting his consciousness all the way to Crate to help the Resistance escape and distract Kylo Ren. However, this was too much for his body to handle. The Force was flowing through him too intensely. As he cut the connection, his body collapsed and he started to feel life leave him. It all went black and he welcomed it, destined to become one with the Force. He didn't know what he would see next. His father, his mother. He anticipated the afterlife eagerly. But what he didn't expect to see in front of him was when he opened his eyes were the harsh hot sands of Tatooine. He felt different as well. He wasn't in his adult body, but rather the body of his 10-year-old self. He hears the calls out from Aunt Beru for him to do his chores and help on the moisture farm. This was nostalgic for Luke, and he thought this was part of his story into the afterlife, so he welcomed it. He carried out his jobs beside his aunt and uncle, waiting for the next stage of the afterlife. But nothing happened. For days he worked the harsh sands of Tatooine, and slowly Luke started to realize that he wasn't in the afterlife, that this was real life, and indeed he had been reborn to his 10-year-old self. The Force had given him a second chance. Luke started to rethink his life. Yes, he saved his father, defeated the Empire, but he also made some mistakes, allowing the First Order to rise and his nephew Ben Solo to turn to the dark side. But this time, it would be different. He thinks of his father, Anakin. He saved him in the original timeline, but he perished on the Death Star. He would change his fate in this timeline. Not only will he save his father, he will do it earlier and ensure that he stays alive to help him defeat the Emperor. Luke lives his life as normal on Tatooine for a few weeks as he formulates his plan. One day during an errand his father sent him on, he takes a detour on his way back through the Junland wastes. He stops his speeder and goes up towards a hut hidden discreetly in the rock system. He knocks on the door, and the man who opens it was a bearded, withered man in his 40s with graying hair, tired eyes, and rugged desert clothes. The man asks who Luke is, but of course he knew the answer. Luke had knocked on the hut of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Luke tells Kenobi who he is and asks the same question, and Kenobi tells the boy his name is Obi-Wan, but most people know him as Ben. But he asks Luke what he's doing here, that surely his uncle would want him home soon. But Luke puts on an act, telling Obi-Wan that he doesn't know why he's here, that for some reason he felt drawn to this place. A sparkle lit in Obi-Wan's eyes. Could Luke finally be showing signs of the Force? Had the time come? Obi-Wan kneels down to Luke and tells him that feeling is no mere feeling. It stems from something deep inside Luke called the Force. Luke asks Obi-Wan what the Force is, who chuckles and tells Luke to come in and they'll talk about it more. Obi-Wan explains to Luke that the Force is an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds and penetrates us, binding the galaxy together. It's everywhere, connecting all beings and matter, but it isn't just a mystical power. It flows from life itself. Together they talk about the Force for hours, until Luke leaves in the early evening. Obi-Wan thought the time had come. Finally, he can begin training Luke to fulfill his destiny. But Luke knew he'd planted the seeds of his plan, and finally it would be set in motion. Over the following years, Luke spends a lot of time with Obi-Wan learning about the Force. Initially this was kept from Uncle Owen, who would not have approved, but after Luke managed to convince him, he was okay with it. At the beginning, Obi-Wan taught Luke about the basics of the Force, but of course he knew all of this, but he had to act like he didn't. Kenobi started with Force powers, basic telekinesis, mind control, and sensing one's environment. Luke obviously could do all of this with ease, which shocked Obi-Wan, in awe at Luke's potential, believing it may even be greater than Anakin. Luke didn't show everything straight away, and soon they moved on to the basics of lightsaber combat, using a training model and wooden staff, balancing physical drills with deep meditation to attune the boy to the Force. Obi-Wan went deep in on Jedi philosophy and history. This is what intrigued Luke the most, as his knowledge of Jedi history was brief and limited, but he questioned Kenobi a lot, asking about why the Jedi fell and the specifics of what happened. But all he ever got out of Obi-Wan was the Jedi fell and the Empire took over. They trained long and hard until Luke was 19 years old, where Obi-Wan declared he had completed his training. At this point, he'd revealed his strength, which would be stronger than that of Anakin in Revenge of the Sith. But he still had more power in him to reveal. On his 19th birthday, Luke had had enough of waiting for Obi-Wan to reveal the truth about Vader and the Emperor, and decided to squeeze it out of him. He told Obi-Wan that he wanted to join the Imperial Academy, which prompted Obi-Wan to tell Luke that maybe now was the time to tell him the truth. Luke sat down, acting confused, as Obi-Wan tells Luke that he's kept the truth hidden from him all these years for his safety. He didn't want to burden a young teenage boy with this information. In this timeline, Obi-Wan already told Luke that he knew his father, but now he tells Luke that he lied to him. His father didn't die. Instead, he turned to the dark side and became Darth Vader, a Sith Lord and apprentice to Darth Sidious, the Emperor of the Galaxy. Together they rule with an iron fist, only caring about their own power, and don't think once about how the people of the galaxy will suffer. Silence encompasses the room, Luke trying to act surprised as he asks Obi-Wan what he plans to do. Obi-Wan tells Luke that he believes it's his destiny to defeat the Emperor and Empire alongside Vader to restore peace to the galaxy and bring back the Jedi Order. Luke nods, agreeing with what Obi-Wan is saying, that it's his destiny for son to destroy father, but deep down knows the outcome has to be different. The following day, Obi-Wan decides it's time to further Anakin's training, and they go to Dagobah to meet with Yoda. Yoda was genuinely surprised at how powerful Luke had become, even more powerful than him at this moment. What they trained in was meditation and philosophy, but Yoda started to sense that something was off. The Force flowed strongly through Luke, yes, but there was something different about his power, something he couldn't quite put his finger on, but would meditate on it further. After months go by, they decide it's time to join the Rebel Alliance, Yoda and Obi-Wan already having close communication with Bail Organa and Mon Mothma. Once they integrate into the Rebels, Yoda, Obi-Wan and Luke decide how to move forward in their plan, and it's Luke who's thought of this for years and proposes what the next step should be. He tells them both that he needs to get on the inside, that the key to the Empire and the Emperor is Vader. He proposes that they send him to infiltrate Vader's ship and squadron in order to get close to the Sith Lord and take him out when he least expects it. Obviously Luke wants to get close to Vader for different reasons, and Obi-Wan and Yoda were cautious about this. It was a big risk, but they trusted Luke and his judgment, so permitted him to do this. The rebels used their spies in the Empire to facilitate this, creating a fake identification for Luke and allocate him to Vader's Imperial Squadron as a TIE fighter pilot. Luke remembers the first time he met Vader. How could he forget? It was a week after he was assigned to the Executor, where he met his father again. Vader walked through the hangar bay after returning to the ship, and after decades, Luke saw his father again. He recalled the hate, the anger, the cold. It burned with fire, but deep within him, hope. The good man was still there, and Anakin Skywalker was alive. Vader paused midway through the hangar and turned to his right, sensing something was there, but Luke remained out of sight, concealing his presence in the Force. Over the coming weeks, Luke went on missions as part of Vader's squadron. He saw firsthand once again the horrors of Vader, which only motivated him to bring his father back to their side. He just needed to figure out how to do it. He knew he needed to get Vader's attention and decided he would do this during their next raid. Their next attack was on a rebel outpost. Luke and his other TIE fighters were deployed to destroy it, but this was not part of Luke's plan. He flies with unmatched precision and intuition, showing off his skills, and disobeyed a direct command to destroy a fleeing ship. Instead, he disables it, destroying the hyperspace drive, and ensured the ship was trapped in their Star Destroyer beacon, so that everyone on board survived. Vader watched the battlefield unfold as he reviewed the footage. His anger rose initially at this pilot disobeying his direct order, until he noticed the pilot's precision and control, his skill behind the cockpit. He reached out with the Force and realized the truth. The Force was strong with this pilot. Later that evening, Luke is brought directly before Vader. Vader said little at first, but asks for his name and background. Luke lies, claiming to have no memory of his childhood, having grown up in the Outer Rim. Vader asks Luke to remove his helmet. Luke hesitates, wondering if through the Force, Vader will make the connection. However, Vader doesn't recognize Luke outright, but something nags at him through the Force. Vader stares into his eyes and tells Luke that the Force is strong with him. He can sense it. His talent is wasted as a pilot and believes there is more to him. Vader forces Luke to undergo a midichlorian test, and this confirms it to Vader, close to 20,000. He sees the potential in Luke. He can become his new apprentice and might be the key to defeating the Emperor and taking the Empire for himself. Vader proclaims to Luke that he is to join him and be trained in the ways of the dark side. He can give him power beyond belief and fuel his ambition for more. Luke tells Vader what he wants to hear, kneeling at his side, stating he will become his apprentice, and Vader couldn't be more happy, believing the Force has granted him this gift, although for an entire different reason. Luke's training begins the next day. Initially he started with basic Force techniques, but Luke intentionally fumbles them. After a few weeks, Luke subtly improves on Vader's techniques by showing deeper control of the Force and more advanced understanding. Vader teaches Luke about the Sith code and asks him to recite it back. Luke does this, and Vader asks him if he understands it. Luke says that he does, but asks Vader, what if passion blinds them? What if strength without purpose leads to tyranny? Vader tells Luke, tyranny is the tool of the weak who fear losing power. True Sith do not fear, they conquer. Conquer what though? Luke replies, ourselves or others. The Jedi tried to master themselves. The Sith tried to master everyone else. But Vader reminded Luke who ruled the galaxy, and that was the end of that lesson. Luke decided the best way to reach the good in his father was to help him understand the way he thinks about the Force is wrong, and slowly he begins to crack the armor. The next lesson, Luke was fighting training droids. Vader telling Luke to strike one, but command the other with the Force. Luke closed his eyes, calmly pulling one droid towards him with ease, while he demobilizes the other mid-air, then lowers it gently to the ground without destruction. Vader watches, asking Luke why he didn't destroy both, and Luke tells Vader that he didn't need to, that victory doesn't always mean domination, sometimes it can mean mercy. But Vader's tone sharpened, telling Luke that mercy is weakness, compassion is a leash of the Jedi. But Luke met his gaze, asking why those who follow that path always end up alone. Vader stiffens, telling Luke that to be alone is to be strong. Attachment clouds judgment. The Jedi let it poison them. But Luke took a breath, telling Vader, maybe, but the Sith replaced poison with fire, burned brighter, destroyed more, and the galaxy suffers. Vader's anger really started to rise, telling Luke the Sith gave galaxy order, that they restored control where the Jedi failed. Luke tilted his head, asking if that's true, why does everyone live in fear? Silence, and Vader stormed off without a word. The following day, Vader tested Luke in a lightsaber duel. As punishment, he attacked ferociously, as Luke defends, as Vader tells him that he's arrogant, questioning what he doesn't understand. Luke's blade locks with Vader's, telling him that Vader believes the Sith code freed him, but it only replaced one cage with another. Vader rushed forward, bellowing that Luke knows nothing of the past, but Luke tells Vader that he knows he's still in pain. He can feel it. That's not strength, that's bondage. You broke free of the Jedi, only to become Palpatine's slave. Vader roars and launches a devastating strike, but Luke blocked it effortlessly, and this time he stopped pretending. He surges forward, disarming Vader, and pushed him back against the wall with the Force, holding his lightsaber at Vader's throat. Enough, Vader proclaims, demanding to know who Luke really is. Luke stepped back and deignites his blade, telling Vader the truth, he is his son, Luke Skywalker. Silence encompasses. Vader doesn't move, he doesn't breathe, telling Luke that's not possible, as Luke tells his father to search his feelings and he'll know it to be true. But Vader can't believe it. His children died with her, with Padme. But Luke shakes his head, telling Vader how he was born in her dying breath. Vader couldn't believe it. Luke opened up his mind to the Force as he allowed Vader to feel his energy. He took a moment, focusing the Force on the man who proclaimed to be his son, and he saw the truth. The Force granted him the answers, the last moments of Padme's life, declaring that there is good in Vader, as Luke is taken away with Obi-Wan. Vader couldn't believe it. It really was true. Luke is his son. He tells Luke to join him, that together they can overthrow the Emperor and rule the galaxy. But Luke shakes his head, telling Vader they can defeat the Emperor, yes, but it will be to free the galaxy, not to enslave it. He tells his father to open his eyes, calling him Anakin, that this is the last thing Padme would have wanted for him. She would have hated the man Anakin had become, but it's not too late. Together, Vader can come back to the light. They can defeat the Empire to restore peace to the galaxy Padme would have wanted. The conflict rose inside Vader. He knew Luke was right, but to turn on the dark side now, to turn back to the light, could it be done? But the answer was yes, as he looked up at Luke, his son, strong and powerful, and knew by his side he could do anything. Vader proclaimed that he would join Luke, and the dark side started to leave Vader. Luke brings Vader to the meeting point with Kenobi and Yoda, and for a moment, thought that Luke might have gone to the other side. But Luke told them Vader was on their side. He had returned back to them, back to the light. But Kenobi shook his head, telling Luke that Anakin was gone. It's impossible to bring him back. But Luke disagreed, stating that the good remained in him all these years. His mother knew it. Padme had told Obi-Wan in her last moments, yet he refused to act on it. The way of the Jedi is to not give up on those that we believe failed us. And that's not what they can do now. Vader steps forward and apologizes to Yoda and Kenobi, telling them all these years he's been in a cage created by the dark side, orchestrated by Palpatine, but only his son Luke could break him free. And now he urges that he's ready to put an end to his tyranny, to support the Jedi once again to defeat the Sith. Yoda tells Vader that if he's to prove himself, to take them to the Emperor, that together they can defeat him. But Vader proclaims that it will not be that simple. He tells them all the truth of the Death Star and its capabilities. They cannot believe it, and Palpatine occupies its throne, only days away from completion. Obi-Wan asks them how they can destroy it, and Luke interrupts, saying rumor has it a flaw has been coded into the system. Luke turns to Vader, telling him that he can get plans for Operation Stardust from Scarif, prove his loyalty to them by doing this, and assisting in the destruction of the Death Star and Emperor Palpatine. And they all move instantly. Yoda and Obi-Wan bring this information to the Rebel Alliance, who act on it immediately, gearing up their forces for an almighty assault. Meanwhile, Vader goes to Scarif to copy the plans, and because of his status in the Empire, is allowed to do this without question. He groups up with the rebels and sends them the plans just as they're about to enter hyperspace. They attack on a coordinated front, the entirety of the rebel forces into hyperspace, and end up right outside Yavin 4. The operators of the Death Star notice this immediately and gear up for battle. Emperor Palpatine, currently on the Death Star, is notified and reaches out with the Force. He senses something is wrong. Vader is here. Could his apprentice be working with the rebels? He contacts Death Star Command, ordering them to release all available TIE fighters and prepare the Death Star cannon to fire. They do this, and Palpatine contacts Tarkin's fleet only a couple of parsecs away, but is fearful they won't make it in time. Meanwhile, Luke and Vader pilot their own ships as the rebel forces engage the Imperials. The battle was fierce, one for the ages, as the larger rebel ships took the brunt of the fire and made way for the smaller fighters, aiming for the flaw in the Death Star. But reports start coming in that the Death Star cannon is charging up, and it's too late. There is no time to do anything. The cannon fires at the center of the fleet, taking out 2 of the rebel command ships, leaving 1 heavy star cruiser with Admiral Akbar left. But this was too late from the Death Star. Luke and Vader had reached the surface, carefully dodging the surface cannons as they enter the Death Star trenches. Luke flies in front of Vader. He's done this before, and knows the exact moment he has to fire. Meanwhile, Vader links his comms to the Imperial throne room through an encoded channel, knowing Palpatine can hear, and tells his master that he will become one with the Force. Luke fires off his proton torpedo, and they fly away, as the torpedo finds its target in the thermal exhaust port and detonates in the main reactor, causing a chain reaction leading to an almighty explosion, with the catastrophic destruction of the Death Star and Emperor Palpatine with it. That night, celebrations were carried out across the galaxy, but the rebels wasted no time in taking over the Imperial Senate on Coruscant and establishing their control. Over the following weeks, they reinstated the Republic, Mon Mothma and her faction, and the rebels took temporary control. They worked to undo the cruelty caused by the Empire. However, the new Republic government is far from unified. There is infighting by the Provisional Council and military command. each believing their opinions matter more because of what they did for the Rebel Alliance. Key players such as Akbar, Fela, and Bel Iblis each had their own views on how the New Republic should be run. However, they knew they were safe because they had the backing of the new Jedi Order. Instead of setting up on Coruscant, they went to Tython, the birthplace of the Jedi Order. There was discussion about whether Vader should be given over to the New Republic for his crimes. However, the truth couldn't be ignored that without Vader, the Death Star, Emperor, and ultimately Empire wouldn't have been destroyed. They decided to keep Vader's return to the light hidden, and he came with them to Tython. News spread that Vader died on the Death Star with Palpatine. They changed his armor so he could no longer be recognized, and this represented how he had truly forgone the dark and returned to the light. The four Jedi, Luke, Yoda, Obi-Wan, and Anakin, set up base in the old temples of Tython. They discussed what they would do now in the future, and came to the unifying agreement that they will help the New Republic facilitate the transformation from the Galactic Empire back to a free galaxy, as well as recruit and train more Jedi to restore order back to what it once was. After their first night on Tython, Luke and Anakin stood on the temple balcony, looking across the luscious landscape of Tython. They looked up in the sky as the moons of Tython, Ashla and Bogan shone above them. They reminisced about the past, about lost time. They spoke of Padme, what she was really like, how she and Anakin met, and how he missed her so much. Many tears were shed that night, Anakin knowing how much he failed her, and now Luke. But he had redeemed himself, and couldn't have done so without his son. Luke looked up at his father. His plan had worked. He'd saved his father, and now he was alive to help him restore the galaxy. He'd taken advantage of the Force's second chance. In the original timeline, Luke was all by himself, but now he had two of the galaxy's strongest Jedi, and his father, to guide him. He hadn't told anyone about his rebirth, believing it didn't serve any purpose and would only cause trouble. But deep down he knew it wasn't over. He knew unrest stirred in the unknown regions. The dark side still lingered, whether it was Snoke gathering his power, or the Sith acolytes attempting to clone their master Palpatine. Whatever it was, Luke knew it was only a matter of time before the Jedi ventured to Exegol to destroy the Sith once and for all. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to watch What If Anakin, Padme, Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon were reborn with all of their memories. Check out Fantasy Sabers, where during August with every order, we're giving away a Free the Sun Deluxe Edition, so don't miss out on that.